All right, here we go again, day 4. I hadn't actually planned on doing, hang on, I gotta straighten this one out, it's all crooked here. Hadn't actually planned on doing a video for today because I thought the two short little pieces that you had to read were pretty straightforward, but I got a few emails from folks expressing a desire for a little bit more context on the questions that I posed in the engagement exercise that's due tomorrow. And so I wanted to just do that, just respond to that. So I've got a very, very short little PowerPoint today that I wanted to get into that picks up on a couple of the things from Tuesday's PowerPoint, from the How Capitalism Works video, and expands on that specifically with respect to monopolies, hence Monopoly Man. Okay, so we talked about capitalism on Tuesday at great length, almost 2 hours worth of length, and so let's we don't need to rehash a lot of that, but one of the main things that I said is that competition is the lifeblood of capitalism. Competition, you need competition to have capitalism, and the more competition you have, the better your capitalism is, the more dynamic your capitalism is. However, there's this little problem that we talked about that is one of the contradictions of capitalism, and that contradiction is that competition by its very nature destroys itself. And so we can pick any random example you want. Let's say that I make let's say that I grow coffee, because coffee is delicious. I grow coffee, okay? I've got a big plantation. I grow thousands of acres of coffee beans, and I harvest them, and I toast them, and I grind them, and I put them in little bags with, I don't know, pictures of volcanoes on them, and then I ship them around the world, and I make all kinds of ridiculous money from the coffee that I make and grow and sell. And then let's say you come along and you think to yourself, you know what, I can do that better. And then you do. You have more land, and your coffee has, you've got better soil. Your coffee beans taste better. You've perfected your roasting practices. You roast them just, mine's a little over roasted. It's got kind of a bitter quality. Yours is just perfect, and you just have a better product than me because you do the thing that I do better than I do it. You're just better. And so you and I are competing, right? We are rivals. We're competing for market share. I'm trying to get people to buy my coffee. You're trying to get the same people to buy your coffee. So we are competing for that market share. But because your coffee's a little bit better, people that had been buying my coffee, they're going to start to buy yours, right? And little by little, I'm going to lose market share. And as I lose market share, you're going to gain market share until such time comes that I've lost so much market share that I can't stay in business anymore, and I've got to go out of business. And so you plan a hostile takeover of my company, or you offer to buy me out, or I just close up shop and you don't even have to buy me out, and then all the customers go over to your coffee, right? So you and I are competing, and we compete so well that eventually you win. And when you win, we're not competing anymore because I'm gone, right? So competition destroys competition, okay? But we need competition to have a dynamic economy, a dynamic capitalist economy, because what happens after I go out of business and now you're the only coffee maker out there? Well, you no longer have the incentive to pay your employees as well as or what they want to be paid, what they deserve to be paid, because they can't exactly quit that job and go out and get another job in coffee making because you're the only coffee maker out there, right? So it gives you more power in terms of how much you can push on your employees. You can, how little you can sort of, how poorly you can treat them. You have more power, um, more ability to treat your employees poorly. Let's put it that way. Here's the other thing. I'm not making any coffee anymore. I'm not selling any coffee anymore. You're the only person making coffee. You're the only person selling coffee, which means that you can set the price for coffee, right? I mean, there might be a point at which your, coffee is $16 a pound or $150 a pound, and at that point, people are just like, you know what, forget it. I'm going to drink whiskey for breakfast. So there may be some limits to the prices. You can't fix any price that you want, depending on what the thing is that you make and sell. But competition drives down the price. Competition drives up the wages. So when there's less competition, there tends to be higher prices and lower wages, right? Okay. So so we need competition. And yet competition destroys competition. You see what I'm saying? So what do we do about that? Well, we have to have an economy that's regulated, right? We have to have an economy that is supervised, that is babysat, because companies left to their own devices aren't going to follow the rules. And so we need a government that babysits the economy. We need a government that steps in and says, wait, you're getting too big now. You're monopolizing. You have unfair advantages, so you have to be smaller. And so we read about a case where the Justice Department was taking Google to court in an effort to, shrink Google, to break it up because it says Google's too big. And, in effect, it does have a monopoly. I mean, how many of you have performed an internet search on Bing in the last decade? Not me. Okay, so capitalism is the lifeblood of a. I'm sorry. Competition is the lifeblood of a capitalist economy. Okay, and there are basically two ways to compete successfully. The first of which is to be better than your competition, to be better than your rivals. And so in our coffee example, whoever you are, you were better, right? You roasted better, you had better soil, the coffee just tasted better. You had, the picture of the volcano on your packages was prettier. You were just better, okay? And so I lost market share and you won market share, but we played fair and square. I did my best. You were better, okay? The other way that you can win in competition, if you're not better, and by better, of course, we mean smarter, harder working, more resources, lucky, or maybe whatever it is, right? The other way to do that, if you can't be better, is to be dirtier, right? To cheat. And I use cheating here loosely because I don't actually mean like breaking the rules necessarily. Lots of cheating does break the rules, but you don't necessarily have to break the rules to cheat. So you can cheat by I don't know, like lobbying the government to pass a law in your favor, which isn't technically illegal, but it isn't fair play, right? You're playing dirty, but you're not breaking the rules. You see what I'm saying? Or you can cheat by, I don't know, cutting corners in some way or misrepresenting your your product in some way to investors, and even if it's not illegal, it's, you know, unfair in some way. If the rules of the game were understood to be sort of to have like integrity, right? Then cheating would be competing without integrity. And people do it all the time because you've got to win when you're competing, because it's capitalism and you have to be growing, you have to be maximizing your profits all the time or you die. And so if you're not maximizing your profits, you die. So if you're not better than the other people, then you're going to have to cheat or you're going to have to die, right? Cheat or die, basically. Those are your options if you're just not better. So, so for our purposes, cheating, what I've been calling cheating, we're going to call that rent seeking. Okay? So rent seeking is looking for unfair advantages. It's not necessarily breaking the rules of the game, but it's going against the spirit of the game by looking for unfair advantages. We're going to call that rent seeking. We're going to call those unfair advantages rents. And that's not the same thing as the rents that you pay to your landlord. That's a different use of the term. Okay, so I borrowed this graph from the New York Times piece that we read for today, and I think my head is in the way. Oh no, it's not in the way, actually. That's good. I guess my head is only in the way of like the years, but I think it's 2016 or 2019 is the last year on the axis there. So if we look at this red line represents companies that have fewer than 100 employees. So if you look at 1993, 40% of companies in the United States had fewer than 100 employees. If you look at 2019, it's down to 35%. Okay, so they've lost. So we have fewer companies in the United States with less than 100 employees. Does that make sense? So fewer small companies, fewer small enterprises. And if you look at the large companies, companies with more than 1,000 workers, that's grown from, I don't know, maybe just above 35% to now over 40%. So basically those two have switched places. Okay, and if we look at mid-sized companies, which is this gray line at the bottom, companies with employees between 100 and 1,000, that has held pretty steady. So what we've seen over the past few decades is a move in our country toward having fewer, larger companies. Okay, and so what that means is there's less competition. What that means is there are more opportunities for rents, for unfair advantages, for cheating, in a sense, because you've got bigger companies that have less competition. Make sense? Okay. So part of this has to do with the fact that our capitalist economy in the United States is a neoliberal capitalist economy. And I'm actually going to explain that in more detail next week when we talk about meritocracy. But for our purposes today, what that means is that the government from the 1970s through to today has increasingly stepped away from babysitting the economy. Okay, the government has been an increasingly lenient babysitter. Okay, you want to eat ice cream for dinner? Do your thing. You want to watch TV all night? Fine with me. The government has become less and less regulatory, right? Less and less willing and able to supervise the economy, which gives companies more freedom to do what they want, to compete in the way that they want to bend the rules, to navigate around the sort of spirit of fair play and fair competition in the spirit of maximizing profits and keeping their shareholders happy, right? So less regulation has meant less competition, okay? Because we need, as we've established, we need the government to come in and say, hey, Google, you're getting too big. Hey, Facebook, you're getting too big. Hey, pork processing industry, you're getting too big. You're too consolidated in too few companies. There's not enough competition, and it's a problem for wages, it's a problem for prices, it's a problem for dynamism, so we're going to need you to break up, okay? The government's unwilling to do that. Companies are getting, the successful companies, are the ones that are competing successfully, are taking over the other ones, or putting them, driving them out of business, and so companies are getting larger and larger and larger and larger, okay? Less competition, so less regulation means less competition. Less competition, as I just said, means more opportunities to cheat. And so when you have, so we know what rents are now, right? Rents are unfair advantages, whether they're against the rules or just against the spirit of the rules. And so when you have unfair advantages from a lack of competition, we call those monopoly rents. Okay, so you don't have to have a perfect monopoly, right? You don't have to be the literal only coffee producer in the country. If you're one of only 3 coffee producers in the country and you have, 60% of the market share, it's not a perfect monopoly, but you are in the process of monopolizing, and so you therefore will have access to monopoly rents. Okay? And less competition is bad for the economy in general, which is why the government must babysit us properly and must ensure that competition is robust, because for all the reasons that I explained. As competition decreases, as the size of companies increases, wages are stagnant or they diminish in real terms. They don't improve because there's less competition, which means fewer companies have more control over the labor market, which means workers have fewer options in terms of where to go. If they don't like what's going on at the job they have fewer options, and so that gives companies more control over wages. For the same set of reasons, it gives companies more control over prices, right? Because if one company owns a lion's share or controls a lion's share of a production of a particular product, then consumers have fewer places to go to get alternative products, and so that gives that company more ability to tweak the prices in their favor. It also means that companies are less incentivized to be actually good at what they do. And I think the example from the reading we did was like trying to call like customer service for like Comcast or something, right? Comcast has a total monopoly, or like if you've ever tried to call customer service for like energy companies, because energy companies all have monopolies. It's an absolute dumpster fire shitstorm of a nightmare trying to get good customer service at some of these places, and it's because they don't have any competition, or they have little competition, so you as a consumer are kind of stuck with them, and so they know that, And so they're trying to maximize profits because that's the name of the game. And one good way to maximize profits is to have shitty customer service, to pay fewer people to pick up the phone, to spend less time training them. And so customer service suffers. When there's less competition, there's less innovation, right? We have less motivation, less incentive to come up with the big new idea because companies already control the whole market share. And so there's less dynamism in the economy. There are fewer opportunities for us to go from job to job, and so we're not moving around too much. Products become more homogeneous. The labor market becomes more homogeneous, and so the economy in general is less dynamic. Okay, so what have we done here? Well, we started by saying competition is super important to a healthy, functioning capitalism. Then we said there's less competition in our economy today than there used to be, which is a bad thing. Then we said that drop-off in competition is because of a drop-off in government regulation, which is a function of neoliberalism. And then we laid out all the problems specifically with a lack of competition, with an increasing tendency toward monopoly rents, the stagnant wages, the higher prices, the worse products, the worse services, etc. Okay, so that's what we did for today. It's a short little one, and I bid you all a fabulous weekend, and I look forward to seeing you in real life on Tuesday of next week. Bye for now.